I want to talk about a show that Disney was, quote, afraid to put its name on. A show that was so ambitious, so dense, and so deliberately not a kid's cartoon that the network that owned it eventually ripped it out of the hands of the person who made it, handed it to a completely different production company, and then aired 13 episodes that the original creator has publicly states he finds painful to watch. And then, and this is where it gets really remarkable, that creator spent the next 30 years refusing to let it die. This is the story of Gargoyles, Greg Weisman, and a fan website called Ask Greg that became one of the most extraordinary things that a creator has ever done for an audience. Let's get into it. Gargoyles premiered on October 24, 1994 as part of Disney's afternoon syndication block. This was the same lineup that gave us DuckTales and Darkwing Duck. On the surface, it sounds like another one of those fun adventure cartoons, but in practice, it was something else entirely. The show follows a clan of Scottish gargoyles, stone by day, warriors by night, who've been frozen in an enchanted sleep for 1,000 years after their castle is betrayed and their clan is massacred. They wake up in 1994 Manhattan, confused, displaced, and outnumbered, trying to protect a city that mostly wants them destroyed.
Oh! Sorry, my fault. Stupid of me. Hope I didn't break anything. Elisa? Oh.
In the first season alone, the show ran an episode where a main character accidentally shoots his closest human friend with her own gun, drops her at the hospital out of shame, and then has to watch while everyone else blames someone else. That episode, which is called Deadly Force, was so graphic in its depiction of the wound that Toon Disney refused to air it in reruns for years. And to be fair, this was a Disney afternoon show. It was in the same block as Goof Troop. The show's main villain, Demona, isn't your typical mustache-twirling bad guy. She's a gargoyle who watched her entire species be systematically hunted to near extinction by humans over 1,000 years, and whose response to that trauma was to become exactly the monster they always accused her of being. She's tragic, she's terrifying, and she isn't redeemed by the end of the series. The show actually lets her stay broken because some things simply don't get fixed.
I'm here to offer an invitation. Leave this drafty old castle and be guests at my home.
I'm afraid we must refuse.
Do not stoop so low as to attack you while you slept.
And Macbeth, the actual historical Macbeth, reimagined, shows up as a centuries-old villain whose connection to Demona goes back to medieval Scotland. The show planted that mystery in Season 1, and it didn't pay off until a 4-part arc deep in Season 2. I'm pretty sure the kids watching didn't catch that, but I'm also sure that the parents absolutely did. Creator Greg Weisman, a former English teacher, had a stated goal of eventually incorporating every major world myth and legend into the show's universe. Shakespeare's characters like Puck, Oberon, Titania, the Weird Sisters, they were all woven into the mythology alongside Norse gods, Arthurian legend, and figures from Irish, Japanese, and Native American folklore. He even had unrealized plans to eventually stage the actual Macbeth play using his characters, with Demona as Lady Macbeth and Goliath as Macduff. It was, by any reasonable measure, the most ambitious children's animated series of its era.
And so it begins. Gargoyles Chapter 2. Or is it 3? I've lost count.
By the end of Season 2, the show had delivered 65 episodes of serialized, consequence-driven storytelling. Disney had just purchased ABC and needed programming for their Saturday morning block. They ordered a 3rd season. And then they took it away from everyone who made it. The Goliath Chronicles, as it was now called, replaced almost the entire creative team. Nelvana took over production. The new writers on the team were largely pulled from the X-Men animated series, not because the original writers were bad, quite the opposite actually, but because they had almost no time to learn what made Gargoyles Gargoyles. The serialized continuity collapsed entirely. Characters started behaving in ways that contradicted years of established arcs, and the sharp, layered writing was replaced with after-school special messaging. Weisman wrote the first episode of Season 3, called The Journey, and was then removed from the project. He's since said that he's watched the remaining 12 episodes exactly once and that they are painful to him. He's explicitly stated that he does not consider the Goliath Chronicles canon at all. Gargoyles was eventually canceled in February of 1997. The show, that had been described as the launching pad for an entire Disney action universe, Michael Eisner himself had floated the idea, was now gone. And that should have been the end.
Stone streets, finer than those the Romans built.
In 1997, Greg Weisman's sister came across a Gargoyles fan site called Station 8 and sent an email to its owner, a fan named Gorbash, saying that she thought her brother might like the page. Gorbash reached out directly, and rather than send a polite acknowledgement and then move on, Weisman did something almost unheard of for a professional creator at the time. He started answering fan questions publicly in great detail about everything. The resulting page, which would be called Ask Greg, became a running document of everything that Weisman had planned, everything the show had seeded, and everything that got cut when the network pulled the rug. He revealed the identity of Brooklyn's future mate. He detailed planned spin-offs called Time Dancer, Pendragon, The New Olympians, Gargoyles 2198 that had reached various stages of development before the regime change at Disney killed the action universe concept entirely. He began watching every episode of seasons 1 and 2 with his family and posting episode-by-episode commentaries, inviting fans to respond with their own memories. In one early contest, Weisman challenged fans to correctly name which 3 roles Patrick Stewart had briefly been considered for on the show. The prize was described as, quote, a lot of personal satisfaction and gloating privileges, end quote. It took over a year for anyone to get it right, and underpinning all of it was a document that fans eventually learned about, a timeline of the entire Gargoyles universe, tracking events from the 10th century through a projected future set in 2198. In a 2023 interview, Weisman confirmed the timeline runs 399 pages. 399 pages of pure awesomeness for a show that was canceled in 1997. In 2006, nearly a decade after cancellation, Slave Labor Graphics licensed Gargoyles from Disney, and Weisman began writing a canonical continuation, picking up directly from the Season 2 finale, explicitly ignoring the entire Season 3, which was called The Goliath Chronicles, and finally telling the stories that he'd been sitting on for 10 years. The first issue sold out, and so did the ones after it. Disney raised licensing fees in 2008, and SLG could not renew. The comic ended mid-story once again. In 2022, Dynamite Entertainment announced a new ongoing Gargoyles series, again written by Weisman. It received 100,000 pre-orders on the first issue. This was Dynamite's highest-selling comic of that year. In 2023, a live-action Gargoyles series was announced for Disney+. This is what happens when a creator refuses to let something die and when an audience refuses to let a creator go. Ask Greg kept the fandom alive through the years when there was literally nothing new. Weisman kept answering questions, he kept revealing lore, and he kept being present. Not for any sort of financial gain, mind you, because he stated publicly that he receives nothing from the show being on Disney+, but because the universe that he built was real to him, and clearly very real to the people who loved it.
We have found each other again. 1,000 years of solitude. Does that mean nothing to you? If you are not my ally, then you are my enemy.
The best children's media trusts its audience. It plants seeds without announcing them, and it builds towards emotional payoffs that work on multiple levels at once. Gargoyles did all of that in 1994, all for an audience that was admittedly too young to fully understand what it was being given. And Greg Weisman spent the 30 years that followed making sure that audience could eventually find out. A gargoyle can no more stop protecting the castle than breathing the air, and it turns out neither can the person who built it.
Is this where you live?
It's just a quiet place to hang my hat, one of many, and it's not as bad as it looks.
If you want to fall down this rabbit hole yourself, at the time of recording this, every season of Gargoyles is on Disney+. The Ask Greg archive is live at station8.org, and the Dynamite comics are ongoing as of right now. Weisman is still writing them, still answering questions, still 399 pages deep in a universe that he's been building for 3 decades. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of thing. I've got a lot more to say about kids' TV that was doing something it had absolutely no business doing. Also consider joining the Patreon for several special perks, one of which being seeing your name on the credits on screen in future videos. I'll see you next time.